Hey everybody, welcome back to class. This week we're going to continue our journey through all things current issues in leadership studies. We've got a couple of major tasks this week. One has to do with our lit review and one has to do with continuing on in some of these critical issues in leadership studies. Let's talk about the lit review first. You should be on step 4 of the process as outlined in our wonderful textbook here. And step 4 has to do with surveying the literature. Now last week we kind of talked about building the argument and all that, but now we're starting to get down to looking at specific journal articles and cataloging them so that you can see what argument they make so you can start building your case. And really the focus of this week for you should be in developing a really good system whereby you can do that. Now, what I like about the textbook here is they give you some good examples of spreadsheets that you can keep track of. And what I would encourage you to do is to build up something like that, either in a table in Word or in Excel, whatever program you like best. I think Word is better. Excel is not as good with textual information. And I think you could probably build a 4 or 5 column spreadsheet kind of thing, or table rather, in Word that'll help you do what they're doing there. Now, remember, this has to be useful for you. So I'm not as hung up on the form that you have, 4 of these categories and 4 of these categories. I think it'll help you. But really what you need to do, though, is you need to start categorizing and encoding the information in sort of a systematic way. So by now you've probably got a bunch of journal articles lying around. You probably printed some out. You probably have a bunch in a folder. And what are you going to do with those? You think you're on the right track with some of those. How are you going to start to incorporate those in your literature review in a real systematic way? Well, this is the process that's going to help you do that. So develop your process. Show me some evidence that you have your process developed this week. What I'm going to do for our assignment at the end of the week is I'm going to ask you to give me your process, what you're using, whether you're using a database program, and how your spreadsheet is coming along. So I think the databases like RefWorks and those kinds of things are good for keeping track of things, but they won't let you kind of lay things out side by side. So I think RefWorks and Zotero and those kinds of things, or that Google Scholar program I showed you last week, I think those are good for beginning to track and keep track of all the articles and maybe search for things, but it won't let you kind of do the side-by-side comparison and to start to see the themes. So for that, you need to lay out one of these tables / spreadsheet things so you can start to compare the different articles and compare the different ideas running across the articles. And again, you can do it the old-fashioned way too, and the author here even suggests that. You can do 3x5 cards, and you can start to lay them out. You can use butcher paper, which are large sheets of paper, maybe those kinds of sheets of paper that they use for conferences, the big Post-it notes, those kinds of things. Whatever approach works for you, but you have to begin to visualize the articles in comparison to one another. So whether you use specific cards or a big piece of paper or lay out a spreadsheet on a table on your computer, you have to find an approach to do that. So please review the chapter this week for how to do that. Now again, they get kind of into the weeds in terms of critical thinking and those sorts of things, and I want you to glean as much as you can from that, but don't get hung up too much upon the science of critical thinking for this, right? Be able to lay out your articles and make your case and show which articles argue for or against a certain position. But I'm not going to be quizzing you on the technicalities of critical thinking as shown in this book. I think this will be good for you, but that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm kind of looking for the end product here, right? That you can catalog and analyze and compare the data that you're looking at in those particular articles, all right? So that's about all I'm going to say about the literature review for this week. Now let's talk about something really interesting, which is chapter 13 of Studying Leadership. And this is a doozy, leadership, ethics, and toxicity. Now, in the Northhouse textbook, I believe there was a chapter there on ethics, but I didn't really get into sort of this toxicity and destructive leadership. And, why is this important? Because, we know we live in a day and age where leadership isn't always positive. And I think also from a critical perspective, we have to understand that that leadership can be a force for good. It can be a force for bad in our organization, and sometimes, unfortunately, even in the church, or maybe even especially in the church, we kind of put up with toxic leaders a lot. And we can make a case for why this happens, why we let this kind of run rampant in the church. But the reality is sometimes we do. And so I think this chapter is illuminating and illustrative about some of the kind of destructive, toxic leadership behaviors that are out there, and to look at some of the research that's been done on some of those things. So we're also going to do a discussion, kind of a deep dive on that particular topic as well. All right, so I hope you enjoy that. And again, not to become critical or cynical about leadership itself. I don't want you to. I don't think that's warranted. But as students of leadership, as graduate students of leadership, you need to understand what the field is saying and what the research is on this whole phenomena of toxic leadership. And of course, to be able to apply it in your own context, to be able to see it, address it, and those sorts of things as a practitioner of leadership. All right, so that's about all I'm going to say for this week. Look forward to engaging with all of you on the discussion boards. So the assignments for this week are going to be the discussion post on the toxic leadership, and then at the end of the week, I'm going to ask you to submit to me some evidence of your process for cataloging and coding the articles that you're finding. So if you want to send me a copy of your spreadsheet, if you want to take a picture of your butcher paper or your 3x5 cards, whatever your process is, that's fine with me. I'll let you do what you want. But I want to see some evidence that you have a process and a system. So don't just say, yeah, I'm using 3x5 cards, or yes, I'm using a spreadsheet. I want to see your 3x5 cards, a picture of them. I want to see a copy of your spreadsheet, so I see that you're actually engaging in the process, that you have your categories laid out, things that you're looking for, and that you're starting to actually catalog some journal articles. All right, I want to start to see some of the articles that you're finding in your process, because we're coming down the home stretch now. This is week 13, I think, 12, 13. We've got just a handful of weeks, and you guys got to write this puppy up. And this right here is the heavy lifting for your lit review. If you notice, there's 5 steps in this process, and 4 of them have to do with the background and the research. The 5th one is actually writing. So really what you're doing now is you're doing all the thought work and the behind the scenes work so that you understand the literature and that you can make a good argument, the discovery argument and the advocacy argument they talk about, right? So discovery is what's out there, and advocacy is the so what. So what is the gap? Where do we need to go? Where's the future research opportunity here because of this gap in the literature? All right, so that's it. Blessings to all of you guys. I'll see you online soon.